Heather is a relationship therapist, supervisor, and educator. She's the recipient of Churchill Fellowship studying marriage and family in UK and USA. Heather is an author of several publications, and she's a co-author of #1 best-selling book, Elevate Your Wellbeing. During the COVID lockdown, Heather was exceptionally prolific. She prepared so many podcasts, trying to reach and outreach to many couples struggling at difficult and painful time. John is Associate Professor of Community Medicine in the University of Wollongong. He's involved in teaching undergrad, training, and mentoring postgrad and registrars. John also has a master's degree in psychiatry in general practice, which gave him a great grasp and deep grasp about the impact of mental health issues affecting couples and families on a grassroots level. John has been in general practice for over 3 decades and more. Both of them ran so many couple weekends, seminars, workshops, getaways, taking with them better marriages across the globe to many countries in Africa, many countries in Asia, across cultures, and also to North America. They have 3 beautiful adult children, and they have 2 gorgeous grandchildren, and they cherish.
And as you hear, they share the better marriages, and they manage to keep us all under control. And Heather and John just add fun to everything they do. Even committee meetings are so much fun. So please don't hesitate about joining us. And I just love that you make me laugh so much, John. And you guys, your passion about enriching other people's marriages are just contagious. How you got us into this, only God knows. And today they're going to talk to us about reigniting your relationship. And when Heather and John talk about igniting, watch out. But we've just noticed on the way here that the fire brigade is very close, so hopefully we'll be okay. Let's give them a big welcome.
Well, folks, I'm going to start to tell you a story about 2 pilots. These 2 pilots got their plane up to the cruising altitude. They engaged the autopilot, and as pilots do, they put their feet up on the cockpit, just kicked back and started to relax. And one pilot said to the other, and before he said it, they did not realise that the intercom for the whole plane was still left on. So they're kicking back, they're not paying attention to the intercom, and one pilot said to the other, "You know what I'd like to do, Fred? I'd like to have a cup of coffee. Then that new blonde hostess, I'd like to give her a passionate kiss." Now, the hostess is right down the other end of the plane, and she goes rushing up to the cockpit, trying to warn the pilot that everyone in the whole plane is hearing this interaction. And this old lady grabbed her and said, "Slow down, dear, slow down. He's having a cup of coffee first." So cruise control, being relaxed, putting your feet up, chilling, can be a mixed blessing. True? I love cruise control in the car because you just push the button and the car does the rest. It always causes a bit of angst for one member of our coupleness because she seems to go a lot slower. She actually, cruise control causes to get much later to where we're heading. Is that true? Yeah. They enjoy travelling in France where the speed limit's 130. I think that's...
I felt comfortable with that.
That's about the speed, that's right. But just imagine if you set your cruise control at 100 and you went all the way from Sydney to Kiama with it set at 100, through the hills, through the bends, through the curves, doing everything at that speed, it would be a very memorable trip. It would be short-lasting and would end in tears, but it would be very memorable. And that's the challenge with setting and forgetting. Sometimes we set and we forget.
So driving on autopilot, with driver fatigue, the quietness and the boredom can set in, and driver's not off. Many people, after being married a while, develop marriage fatigue, which is just as dangerous. This is the problem with autopilot in our relationships. We get complacent. We can even become bored and go through the motions. So being in such a relaxed state when suddenly a problem situation arises, be it an illness curveball or an unexpected loss or a cumulative stress potholes, we can be also slow to react in our most loving relationship. Never get too comfortable that you don't stay alert to any obstacle. They may hit you by surprise, or they may be more subtle and creep in insidiously whilst you're unaware of the eroding impact. Couples come to me in a separated state and say, "We don't know how this happened. I don't know how I fell out of love with her." They're perplexed. It's because they've been on autopilot. So let's look at how we can prevent this happening. This is all about being, this day is about being proactive. So let's look at how we can be the best prevention that we can give is to continue reigniting our connection, continually putting those sticks on the fire, continually fanning the flame, whether that's on an emotional level, a sexual level, a cognitive level in your relationship, whatever aspect of intimacy it might be. It's about fanning that flame and keeping it alive. So no matter how young or old we are in our marriage, never stop building up your friendship and keeping your romance alive, just like Robin was encouraging us to do this morning.
Now, what does friendship look like over the years? Let's have a look at this photo. Remember, see this handsome couple there? That was before Heather wore my hair off by sort of massaging my scalp.
See, I honestly reckon he looked like Chris Christopherson there. For those of us who are old enough to know who Chris Christopherson is, he was the splitting image of Chris Christopherson, and he even played in the band John as well.
There you go. So this is a snapshot of a very memorable time in our life. In fact, this photo was in the North Shore Times for Bride of the Week. In those days, they didn't have Groom of the Week. So she was a Bride of the Week in the North Shore Times. It was a great day, but this is not our marriage. This is a snapshot of one point in our marriage, but our marriage is an ongoing journey with different people, different life stages, different visions, different ways that we see the world. It's different to how it was 30 years ago in marriage, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. In fact, it's even different to how it was a month ago or a week ago. Our marriage is constantly evolving, constantly changing. And one of the challenges is sometimes we're caught in the time warp of thinking this is how my partner is, this is how my partner will react, but you're in a time warp. So we're going to look today about how we can activate our passion by connecting with each other in new ways. We're going to discover how you can expand your horizons by exploring ways we can move from our courage or comfort zone or our comfort zone to our courage zone. We're going to give you a chance to increase your marriage potential by trying new things and being intentional about rediscovering meaningful things that were significant for us in the past. Now, at the start of this last COVID pandemic, I took our ex-leader's advice, Scott Morrison's advice, to heart when he talked about the economy. He said it'll hibernate, and then after COVID it will spring back into action. I took that seriously. I decided that was going to be me. I was going to hibernate, I was going to read books, I was going to enjoy life, I was going to do basically nothing. And then when the COVID finished, I was going to spring into action, back to the new improved version. I don't know if you can relate to that story, but...
you were enlarging and enjoying your comfort zone to the nth degree.
I was.
So indeed, we do have, each of us, a comfort zone. It's risk-free, predictable, safe and secure. Our comfort zone is full of things that we enjoy doing and usually do. And we have a courage zone, on the other hand, with things that we might be afraid of or have never tried. Unexplored, risky territory in this circle, but with opportunities to be brave and have an adventure. And this courage zone very much includes talking about the hard stuff, relating on a level of discussing what irritates us, what might be the issue that is a stumbling block for us in growing forward. So we need to become aware of ourselves and what's going on inside of us in order to be able to then express that. That's all about the courage zone. And of course, you see often for couples that get stuck back in the comfort zone, there's unresolved issues that just bubble under the surface. Partners become detached from each other and just gradually distanced from each other. And sadly, some relationships end at this point because they're just not relating to each other anymore on a connecting level. They may have subtle contempt towards each other or be quietly stonewalling each other, which is what John Gottman says is the worst thing that predicts divorce. Contempt and stonewalling. So something for us to really remember.
So this is a tangible example of what will happen to you if you're stuck in your comfort zone. You're left with the bare bones of a relationship without chances to grow, develop, or strengthen. Life lived in the comfort zone causes you to waste away. You go from being Mr. Universe to Mr. Puniverse.
Recently, we ran a couples getaway in our home. There were 5 couples who spent the weekend with us talking about their relationship and how it's going and where they wanted it to be heading. And one couple was concerned with the fact that they needed to break out of their comfort zone. As they headed towards retirement, they wanted to expand into new areas as a couple. They wanted to stop doing the same old, and really wanted to have more growth and vitality in their relationship. Yet, another couple, again, a vital couple who was investing into their marriage growth, they had the direct opposite situation. They'd been spending far too much time in their courage zone. They'd moved house every year or two. They had 3 teenage kids and then a toddler and a 5-year-old, so 2 different generations almost in the one family, and both had jobs that were extremely, totally stressful and people-focused. So their desire for the weekend was to learn ways of getting out of their courage zone. They'd spent too much time in that courage zone, over a decade and a half, and they wanted to have some time back in the comfort zone. So our needs in different seasons of our marriage can be incredibly different. And at the same season of our marriage, John might have a need to be in his comfort zone as he did through COVID. I kind of had a sense of, well, as was explained in the intro, like wanting to reach out to the people that were stuck. So that was way out of my comfort zone, in the same season, we had two different things happening, which worked for us because you respected me and where I was going. And I would encourage you along the way to sometimes.
You did say I was
said,
becoming
this could be
a
2
boring
years.
person.
Yeah, that's right. I said, this could be 2 years. Are you going to really, how long can you be asking me to watch Netflix with you for?
Okay, moving on. Nothing to see here, nothing to see. Okay, let's have a look at what happens if you stay in your courage zone. It could be exhilarating, but it also could be stressful, tiring, and gives us a risk of being burnt out. We can feel battered and bruised as we spend time in our courage zone. So in our relationship, we have to be able to transition backwards and forwards. We're in our courage zone, battered and bruised, but doing adventurous, fun, challenging things. We have to be able to transition back in to our comfort zone, to recharge our battery, to focus on life, to get a bit of a spiritual boost and reflection, to enjoy where we are and where we're heading before we step out again into the adventure of the unknown. Now, there's a recent example of someone who's had to step out of their comfort zone. Mark and Chantel Doyle were off Port Macquarie, Shirley Beach, surfing in the morning froth when the great white shark attacks. Chantel cries out. Through thrashing and suddenly bloodied water, Mark sees a fin, cold beady eyes and a mouth of bristling teeth. So he jumps in to save her. He smashes the shark in the head with his fists and belts its beady eyes till it gets the message to let go of my wife. Mark Motley says later to the TV cameras, I did what anyone would have done. Now he starts to choke up. When you see the mother of your child and your support and everything that's who you are grabbed by a shark, you just react. Now I tell this story at the risk of causing marital trauma and challenges. Perhaps you are quietly thinking, would my partner jump in and punch a shark on my behalf? Would my partner be able to jump in and wrestle a shark to save my partner?
So, we don't want you to stay in that space. We're going to move on quickly, but that might be something that you could share on the way home. But for each of us...
Don't put your hand up. It's not a survey, just internal thoughts.
For each of us to get out into the courage zone from our comfort zone, we need to take a risk, right? And as you know, as soon as you take a risk to move into that growth circle, anxiety can start to build up. Okay, a little anxiety becomes bigger anxiety quite quickly. You could feel vulnerable, understandably. You could feel isolated. You could feel really, really uncomfortable, thinking, oh, I'm going to fail at this. This is new territory and you don't speak the language. And the tendency for many of us is to relieve anxiety. That's what we first want to do, right? By quickly jumping back into the comfort and safety zone. I'd like to introduce you to a term called differentiation. This is the ability to stand on your own 2 feet physically and emotionally when you're close with each other. So to be connected, yet still two very much individuals. So what does it mean to stand on your 2 feet physically and emotionally when we're close together? To be separate, yet together. Let's repeat that. To be separate, yet together. We can do that better, guys. To be separate, yet together. Okay, let's do it again. To be separate individuals and together. Okay?
At the same time.
At the same time.
And just to demonstrate that, I'm going to get you each to stand up, okay? So put your stuff down, stand up, face towards each other, spread out a little bit. Try and get the morning tea out of your system. Okay, now many couples have a marriage where they're propping each other up. So I want you to stand about half a metre to a metre apart, and I want you to lean into each other. Okay, now I want you, each of you, to take 1 foot off the ground. Okay, now let's have a look what's happening. If one wobbles, the other wobbles. Okay, you can put your feet down if you can't wobble anymore. If one's anxious or panicky, the other feels anxious or panicky. If one is sad, the other is sad. If one's uncertain, the other is uncertain. And these wobbles start early. Even last week, our 5-year-old grandchildren, Oliver got his injection and he burst into hysterical tears. Macy burst into hysterical tears before they even got the needle out. Okay, that's the whole thing with this wobbling. You're sort of propping each other up. One wobbles, the other wobbles.
And Macy's the very, courageous one in the relationship. Not in the relationship, she's a courageous individual. But she just followed suit to a twin brother. Okay? It shows the lack of differentiation. This is what we're talking about, which is particularly renowned in twins, right? For understandable reasons. But we don't want to be reactive like that just because one is. We don't want to follow suit in the same way like our twin grandchildren did with their injections.
And the way we get out of this pattern is to learn to self-soothe. Now, perhaps each of you could just stand nice and still, separate from each other. Okay, I want you to just imagine in your own mind you're like a strong tree rooted firmly by streams of water. Your roots go down deep, deep, deep. Perhaps you could imagine you're being anchored in God's love and relying on His strength or His resources. Or perhaps you're drawing on your lived experience of past times and you're resilient. But just picture standing straight and tall, standing firm. Take a couple of big, deep breaths, feeling comfortable, calm, in control. So for the sake of this example, let's imagine, blokes, you are now the strong tree, standing straight and tall, both feet on the ground, drawing on the strength. Now get your partner to lean into you. So you've got to stand a metre away and lean in. Okay, you've got to have a proper lean, partners. Lean in.
Like this.
Okay, all right. Now, while your partner's standing straight and tall and strong, I'll get you to lift your leg off the ground and see what happens.
Being the sturdy tree.
The sturdy tree has both legs on the ground, of course. We don't have one-legged trees, okay? Okay, can you notice a difference there? Yep, their wobbles don't rub off on you. Partner can draw on your strength and stability. Have a seat, just talk to each other for a few minutes. How was that for you?
So if we come back together, and with all these little activities, you might want to make a note for the note taker in the relationship to be able to just follow through with what conversations you start with so that they don't get lost, okay? And that's great for those who are driving home for longer distances because you'll have so much extra time to be able to really put that those conversations in as you go home. So let's just try a quick quiz and see how differentiated you are in your own marriage. Just reflect on when you listen to your partner who's in distress. Do you wish they'd go away and keep their problems to themselves? Do you start arguing and defend yourself? Do you assume automatically you've done something wrong, even though they haven't been blaming you? Or do you feel anxious and automatically try to fix things to make them right?
You know, I recently saw a T-shirt that said this: "My wife says I only have two faults: I don't listen and something else." Actually got it here. I can sell them.
Don't you just love that?
And this is a trap that I've fallen through over the years. Perhaps it's a blokey thing, but I've often fallen into the trap of being Mr. Fix-It rather than listening to you. And part of that is the fact that when you're telling me a problem or a situation, I get anxious. Okay, and the way I cope with being anxious about things is trying to fix things quickly so I can get back into my comfort zone and not have to stress any more about it.
Yeah. That anxiety pushes you in a direction quickly, of a direction that you don't want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't sort of hear the depth of your feelings or the depth of the situation.
Yeah.
I'm giving solutions.
Yes, yeah. And I hear that you don't want to be giving solutions because you know that doesn't work for me. And I personally don't know anyone who it does work for.
A little bit of knowing laughter there, quietly in the...
That's an anecdote, okay? Like, I personally don't know anyone, but I might meet somebody tomorrow, who knows, but I've never met anybody yet. And so... But what I'm hearing from you right now is that you're expressing a sense of regret about that. You wish that hasn't been you in the past.
Yes, well, what's happened, I mean, being a GP, I have an idea I need to fix people in 15 minutes, tell them what their problem is and get them out. And that doesn't work in marriage so much, does it?
No, otherwise I might be out.
Good on you. And that's been a challenge with chronic fatigue for the last 2 years because it's not sort of fixable. And often you just want to talk about how things are for you and how you're finding it and when you're sad and struggling rather than me trying to come up with a solution because sometimes there's no solution.
Yeah. And the sense of grief of the loss mentally and physically that I used to have. I just feel so blessed. I had no idea of just the abundance of energy, mentally and physically, I did have before. But just to plummet so quickly, I know that you learnt early, because it's been 2 years, I know you learnt early that your Mr. Fix-It was certainly not going to...
It wasn't fixing it.
No.
And it wasn't helping us.
No.
So I'm learning to sit with anxiety, to sit with you in a situation where I can't fix things.
Yeah, and I've seen a remarkable change of that in you, which has just really helped our marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you've been doing it, working on that for like years.
Yes.
And it's been like an improvement like this. But then because of this challenge that affects me, but it also affects us, you've done another huge curve, which I have greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, so Brene Brown comes up with this quote: "Rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection." So words don't change a situation. Words between each other doesn't change the situation. What changes the situation for us is that their partner feels connected to it. It's not what we say, it's how connected our partner feels with them. So
and that's a beautiful feeling, isn't it?
That's a beautiful feeling.
When that happens.
Yeah, so if you've got a Masters of Differentiation and you're in the situation where your partner is distressed, you can show empathy and concern to them even if you don't agree with what they're saying. That's the hard bit. It's easy for me to show empathy and concern if I believe what Heather's saying. But if I totally disagree with what she's saying, it's very hard to be empathic and show concern, isn't it, in that situation? So the take-home message is this. Before giving advice, respond with, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for telling me. Practice that phrase. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for telling me. Or, gosh, that sounds awful or disappointing or sad or whatever the feeling is.
And if there's something that you don't understand and seems way off the mark, like just way off, then to have a curiosity as well as empathy, that's the antidote, empathy, but another antidote is to have a spirit of curiosity. Oh, that's interesting. Like, interesting covers up a number of, it's a euphemism, big time, isn't it? Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more, so I can have more understanding. Isn't that a lovely way of saying, isn't that a leaning in phrase rather than, oh, you're crazy, or, which is total verbal abuse, really. Just to lean in and say, oh, tell me more, I want to hear more about that. And that just puts so much emotional, it heightens your emotional bank account big time, very quickly. Curiosity and empathy. So sometimes we all get so afraid of the vulnerability in going from the comfort zone to the courage zone that we actually stop trying or do anything that we're not already good at. So you might be thinking, oh, I'm no good at active listening. I've tried that before, learnt it in professional development workshop. Here we go again. They're talking about this now. But if it's not already comfortable, if we already don't have some expertise, if we don't already know how to do it well, often we're just not doing it, okay? And this is the trap. Sadly, I observe this so very much in our age group, John's and my age group. Here's what's hard and I think very scary about that. When we give up doing new things, whether it's active listening or learning a different way of relating or just doing new things in general, if we give up, if we stop moving into new territory and feeling awkward, we stop growing. And when we stop growing, we stop living. When we stop growing, we stop living. I love Bob Dylan's line in this, if you ain't busy living, you're busy dying. When we stop growing, we start declining. There is no neutral here. So can I invite you to get comfortable with the uncomfortable? Get comfortable with uncomfortable. If you can get comfortable with the uncomfortable in your relationship, just that attitude is putting heaps of more logs on the fire to fan the flame in every area of your relationship, because you're saying, hey, honey, I'm prepared to be uncomfortable, to feel the discomfort, to be able to help us grow more. Or to yourself, it might be the self-talk. Hey, Heather, I'm prepared to be uncomfortable to be able to gain more self-awareness, to be able to then enhance the relationship because I know what's going on inside me and then I can express it. Hey? If we can get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Get comfortable with what? The uncomfortable. Okay. So, when we no longer feel that discomfort of being new, of being an awkward learner, things start to shut down inside of us. The discomfort of doing new things, of being an awkward rookie again, is our actual lifeblood. I was just recently sharing with our two daughters about a massive turning point in my life when I was only 8 years old. It was vital for me to take a huge step out of my comfort zone. I'd taken Melinda and Christine away on a girls' weekend, which we do each year, to have mother-daughter time. And as we sat down outside my old primary school, where it all happened, and if you were with me back then, this was over 50 years ago, I was an extremely shy little girl. Now, I know some people find that hard to believe, but believe me, I was so my mother said I was embarrassingly shy. And we'd moved from Tasmania up to Sydney in an awkward part of the school year, August, and I was in third class. And I didn't understand any of the curriculum because in Tasmania they were a year behind. Seriously, a year. I hope there's no Taswegians here. But they were a year behind academically. So I just got plonked into the top third class because I was top of the top third class in Tasmania. But all of a sudden, plummeted. I didn't understand anything when I got to the New South Wales curriculum. I had no school uniform as they were out of stock, so I wore this daggy tartan skirt for 6 weeks until the new uniform came in for me. And so if you could picture me in that playground, a shy, timid little thing, nobody reaching out to me, feeling so isolated. And I just wanted a shell to crawl up in. Then one day, there was a moment when it was just all too much for me. And in that moment, an epiphany just dropped into my head. And it was this: Heather, you can't keep being shy. It's just not working for you. I can't believe that dropped in as an 8-year-old, but it did. I just felt like personally, in my faith, like not that I had any faith then, but I just looked back and think, wow, God was speaking to me before I even knew him. It was like, Heather, you just can't keep being shy. So try something else because this isn't working for you. I can remember as if it was yesterday. And I sheepishly, with such an awkward, sick feeling inside my stomach, I went up to a girl and asked, can I play with you? Her name was Rena Leviticus. She was from Yugoslavia. She'd migrated recently, and we became best friends for the rest of our primary school days. There are times when we just have to speak another voice into our head. Another voice that's much more constructive. Heather, just do it. You've got this. Back yourself up. If you're struggling with relating in a certain way with your partner, but you know it's going to be the best way to enhance your relationship, back yourself up. Be your own cheerleader if there's no one else. And even if there is, be your own cheerleader anyway.
And it's been great how there's now a legacy with our children too, that you shared that with our daughters, and that now is the legacy in our family that you've sort of passed on, the fact of sometimes it's really helpful to get out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. For just a couple of minutes, just turn to each other and just talk about a time that you have had to jump from your comfort to your courage zone in your life. And just how it was scary, but it's been life-changing.
Music. Yeah. Remember, just listen to the feelings your partner's expressing. Reflect back those feelings in similar words that they've used. Make it similar to what you've heard so they feel really validated. There'll just be one opportunity for one partner to probably share. The other, really practice in listening.
That's quite an encouraging thing to talk about, isn't it? Times you've actually jumped from comfort to courage and how it's been life-affirming and life-changing. We'll continue on with that talk in the car going home. So if jumping from comfort to courage needs you to soothe yourself. The second thing we're going to learn is that you need to name the situation that you're in. Brene Brown, who's a American social researcher, talks about how we can get through experiences called FFTs. We're going to call them freaky first times, but there is a more descriptive Texan term that she uses, I can't repeat, in the Baptist church. Okay, let's call them effing first times. Okay, this is how she refers to these times in our life, that this is a new experience, a freaky first time. And there's a strategy we can make to try and get over this discomfort that happens. The first thing we need to do is we need to name it. So when you say, what's the story here? I'm out of control, I don't know what's going on, I'm feeling anxious, I feel nervous. Then you say to yourself, that's right, I'm in a freaky first time. It could be something small like yoga class or learning to ride a bike or trying a new thing like reflective listening in your marriage. For some of you who have come along to this thinking, what's this all about, going to a marriage conference, this is a freaky first time for you. You could sit there naming and saying, this is why it seems awkward, this is why it seems a bit unusual, this is why I feel a bit sort of squirmy about this. This is a freaky first time. And once you name it, you can put energy into how to overcome it. The second step is normalising it.
And normalising the difficulty is so key. And one way is just reminding yourself, if you're struggling with, talking about relationship stuff, do you feel it's a freaky time when you go and service your car each year? It's not too freaky, is it? Hey? Or do you feel uncomfortable as if it's a freaky moment, going to the gym? So it might have been the first time, but then it becomes so normal, doesn't it, to keep up our fitness and health. So normalising the difficulty is crucial here. We could do it by telling ourselves, this is new and you're not experienced at it yet. That's why you're not doing as well as you thought you would. Let's say we're trying to use active listening in our relationship, which is the most essential ingredient to all communication. Instead of our self-talk being, oh, this is just too hard, it feels fake, it feels awkward, we could change our self-talk to, it's okay, this is exactly how it's supposed to feel when I try something new. It's uncomfortable, it's awkward, because being brave is uncomfortable and awkward. So when we accept the difficulty of the situation as normal, we can shift our focus and energy from fighting our negative emotions to working on our growth and improvement. An example for me with this was public speaking. I would try to turn my nervous energy and thoughts of, I'll make a fool of myself, to excited energy saying, hey, Heather, you've got some really important things to share. And there's people out there who really want to hear this stuff. So to focus on the higher purpose was really valuable for me. So shifting, naming it and normalising it. And the third step of the strategy is putting it into perspective, the difficulty that you're facing. This feeling's not permanent. It doesn't mean I suck at everything. It just means I'm in the middle of an FFT around this one thing. It's just one thing.
And if you look at it, all the things we're so passionate about now, our hobbies, our job, being a parent. Imagine being a first-time parent. That's an FFT, isn't it? Having this newborn in your arms without an instruction manual. FFT, normalise it. Put it into perspective. Look, I'm good in other parts of my life. I'll nail this parenting part, The next thing you need to do is to ground your expectations in reality. And wives are good at this, aren't they? They give you like a reality check. But we also have to have an internal reality check as well. We have to have an opportunity to say, look, this might be more complicated than we thought, it might not go as well as we thought, but I'm going to give them the best shot even though it's awkward and I have to be brave. And there's a quote from Nelson Mandela: expectations are just resentments waiting to happen. Expectations are just resentments waiting to happen. So if you've got an expectation that you're going to do brilliantly at something, even though it's new and you haven't done it before, I think your expectations might be getting in the way. So I'll tell you the story about my freaky first time. I turned up at the Kiama table tennis club with my trusty bat I'd kept in the cupboard for the last 20 years. And this 94-year-old man said, "Oh, come and give me a game, son." So I stepped up and he promptly whipped me. I thought, this is not good, beaten by a 94-year-old. And then his wife, 87 in the wheelchair, said, "Okay, you can play me next." And she promptly whipped the pants off me as well. So this is not going down too well here, is it, eh? So I had to realise that this is the first time for me. That I'm not going to be I have to name it. This is the first time for me playing table tennis. I have to say I'm not going to be as good at it as I imagine. The rest of my life I don't suck. This is just one particular area. Then I have to put in perspective saying, perhaps I'm not going to be the answer to the table tennis needs of Kiama. I'm only a beginner. That's how the process works.
So this quote for normalising or summarises the way our relationship could cope with the transition from comfort to courage zone. Brené says, normalising discomfort, learning how to stay standing in the midst of feeling unsure and uncertain, that's the foundation of courage. So imagine what it would be like to know that you can get through something that feels really vulnerable for you and uncomfortable, that you have what it takes to survive those cringy, awkward moments. And knowing that we have the strength to survive, says Brené, those moments and come out on the other side with new information, new ideas, new habits, new skills. That's how we get braver with our lives and with our hearts. And in our marriage, when we're brave, we come out on the other side with a reignited connection. The fruit of having courage to grow and to change automatically activates our passion. You know, I'm always 100% more passionate towards you, John, when you want to grow personally and when you show signs of wanting our relationship to grow more. It automatically increases my passion. Just your desire shown in action with that. When you put that action, when you make a decision to act on growing and being willing to be pruned, just as I need to do just as much of, if not more, I just feel more, I grow more in love with you instantly when that happens. So a natural flow of that desire for growth expands our horizons. And you know what? In that area, we're no different to any other couple. That's what I love about my work, having the privilege of witnessing people grow and become more loving and passionate towards each other. So let's all be brave and face uncertainty and try something new in our relationship if the old is not working.
And as we touched on before, that parts of our comfort and our growth circles are very different. For example, with conflict, I came from a family that never shouted at each other, didn't know how to deal with conflict. If conflict arises, I'd try and sort of keep my head down and try and wait till it went away, which didn't go down too well when I wasn't there to protect you and support you. So for me, my growth point is to get from my comfort zone to my courage zone by being more supportive for you.
Yeah, and I've really valued that over the time, just immensely. And it's interesting how, for me, the effort of moving from the comfort to the courage zone involves me being slower to react, you know, being more curious. And so while it takes courage for you to do something to get into your courage zone, it actually is courageous for me to not do something, not respond so quickly, to slow things down. And so that's my learning curve. When I'm tired and frustrated, it's a lot more comfortable for me to just become irritated and even exasperated. And sadly, with the suffering of the chronic fatigue over these 2 years, I've got less, what would you call it, less, what's the phrase I'm trying to think of, less resources, and what's the phrase I'm trying to think of, guys? Sorry?
Capacity.
Less patience, less capacity for patience, that's
Yes.
right. And so, you know, we always try and just say something once, and, well, I do, but sometimes when I have to say it more often, which I was quite okay with it in the past, but with chronic fatigue, I just feel, I've got no energy. I'm trying to say.
You can't say things over and over
so
again.
to have to be on repeat, it's exhausting.
Exactly.
So I get more irritated, and my learning curve is to slow it down, to say, hey, honey, remember, I find things really tiring, just generally through life. And then you're quick to, oh, yeah. So you put your listening ears on
That's
better.
right. So for me to get from my comfort to the courage zone, I have to do something. For you to get from your comfort to your courage zone, you have to not do something. Yeah. So certainly you could see it's different for different people in the position of their life that they're in.
Who was it, Malcolm Fraser, who said life wasn't meant to be easy? So, moving into my courage zone would be, how do I do that? Okay, just to give you an example so you can reflect on your examples in your life. Entering into my courage zone would be reflecting on my triggers, to actually understand my trigger, which is, as you can see, my main trigger by far is not being listened to. Okay. Slowing down my reactions and responding kindly as I give feedback, speaking the truth in love. Hey, honey, are you okay to just really listen well? So we found a very powerful way to heal from our triggers. It's not today's topic, but understanding, becoming aware of your triggers. I call them emotional allergies. And there's some very helpful strategies for healing your emotional allergy, which lessens your trigger capacity then when you understand your emotional allergies. And they're not out there now, the books, but in the Elevate Your Wellbeing book that I co-authored, that was mentioned before, when I do put them out and get them out of the box, that chapter that I've written helps you understand how to break through with your emotional allergies. It's called Freedom Through Forgiveness.
So we're going to give you a chance now. If you go to your folders there's 2 round blue circles, your comfort zone and your courage zone. Perhaps if you could put a few life situations into the comfort or courage zone, like how you handle conflict or parenting or work-life balance, and pick one thing you'd like to move from your comfort zone and another thing you'd like to move from your courage to your comfort zone.
Okay, let's go. Must say that. Okay.
This will be here. This will start.
We need to talk about rituals first. Need to introduce it. There you go. Just say that. That statement there. I'll introduce it, then you go. Okay.
Okay, folks, we might reconnect. So we've been started talking about the dangers of having our marriage on autopilot. Just before we break for lunch, we're going to talk about the idea of the antidote being an intentional couple. And the way we can do that is developing couple rituals. Now, rituals sound a bit of a negative thing. You sort of think to yourself, oh, no, I don't want to do that. But look upon rituals as a way of punctuating the daily routine of life with exclamation points. Something comes up and pow. That's an exclamation point. It makes you stop, it makes you reflect, it makes you think what's working well for your relationship. Like ballroom dancing, you have to know what you're doing, you have to be coordinated, you have to be on the same page.
Which was hard for you because you learnt to do ballroom dancing at an all-boys school, hey?
That was a bit of a traumatic part of my life, learning ballroom dancing in the playground to a gramophone record, knowing half the guys' steps and half the girls' steps. Not a good translation for life, eh? And these are the components of a ritual, which we won't go through today as much, but just remember it has to be repetitive, it has to be coordinated, and it has to have significance.
And this helps us implementing rituals of connection that build your couple friendship and help it to grow. That's being proactive about putting ideas into action to bring your married life to the fore rather than just watching life go by as a blur. And I love that about our relationship, that we're really intentional, that we make daily choices on how that can happen. I mean, choices that are going to affect the day and the weeks and the months. So it's a conscious act of our will and effort in order to see the fruit of that. Yeah. So you've talked about, just very briefly, about those three aspects of repetition. Bill Doherty talks about this, rituals, and it has to be repetitive to make it a ritual, okay? Not just, something that you do and you say, wouldn't it be nice to do it again? It's actually a constant ritual that builds your connection.
For example, just reflecting on my vasectomy.
That's an interesting thing to reflect on in the middle of...
Just, well, you see, that was memorable, okay? But it is not a ritual because it's not repetitive, which is thankful, okay? So to be there's a lot of things you think, gosh, it'd be great to do that or do it again. But if you don't do it again, it's not a ritual. It has to be repetitive.
But part of that is a ritual for us because you asked me to come and join you in on that and tickle your feet.
True.
So, I tickle your feet fairly frequently, and you wanted me to do that to help soothe you through that operation.
The idea was we started our reproductive journey together and we'd finish it together. So that was...
So the actual vasectomy is not a ritual, but the tickling the feet is. So, it's working out the consistency of what makes a ritual. And the second one is coordination. We talked about dancing, ballroom dancing. Well, tango. We've just started tango dancing, actually, which has been a great thing to do. And it has to be coordinated to work. Like, you are the leader and I'm the follower, and I love that. Just love it. It lets me off a bit you know, and but it's taking that coordination, making it happen, and being focused on that. That's what makes a good ritual.
And the final thing is it has to be significant. And you can make significant things out of minor things. There's a lot of life is fairly routine, isn't it? It'd be fair to say with that. But you can make it into a really exciting connecting ritual. For example, sometimes when we go to Woolworths, I pick up a big bunch of flowers and give it to Heather. We put it in the trolley. We walk proudly around the whole shop with these lovely flowers in, and we get to the checkout and Heather puts it back.
I have to be the one who makes the conscious decision to do that. Otherwise, you're going to fall into problems.
That's right. So don't try this without coordinating your ritual. Don't give your wife flowers at the start of your shopping date, only to take them back when you get to the checkout. That ends in tears. So you have to coordinate your ritual, you have to discuss your ritual, but even easy things can be connection rituals.
Easy things that give you emotional connection, which obviously receiving flowers does. And having fun with flowers, even if you choose to put them back. I mean, because after all, how many flowers, you know, if you go to Woolworths, how often, you know, so it's about choice, okay? I'm just thinking...
We might end up with a 10-second kiss, I think. So
that's a ritual.
That's a ritual, okay. How you say hellos and goodbyes in your life is what brings the spice, the exclamation mark to your marriage.
There's a book called The 10-Second Kiss, okay? So we're not just introducing something new here, but it will profoundly increase the warmth in your relationship if on the highs and goodbyes of life that you have every day with your partner, if you can experiment with a 10-second kiss as you say goodbye, a 10-second kiss as you greet each other again. And that pause of enjoying each other's company provides a regular connection point in the highs and byes of life. And now if the 10-second kiss is too daunting for whatever reason, try a 10-second hug.
Okay, we might just quickly try that now. Just stand up, stretch your legs. You won't have the opportunity to do the full 10-second kiss. Just imagine you haven't seen each other for 3 months. You're at the airport, you're running towards each other, and you're reconnecting. Okay, let's try 10-second kiss or 10-second hug.
Yeah. Okay.
Done. Okay, that's a fantastic connection ritual, you'll agree. Try doing that in the highs and byes of your life. Have a sit down if you're able to. If you haven't gone all weak at the knees, sort of shaking, shivery.
Sometimes rituals, they need to be reassessed if both parties have unequal expectations. A big example for us in this was bubble baths, hey? We had different expectations. For me, it meant warmth, relaxing, and being winding down, talking about the day.
For me, it was foreplay, going into a bubble bath.
So we had to communicate our very different expectations of what a bubble bath meant to each of us. Yeah? And so we needed to work on focusing on, well, as I said to you years back, when this became a problem, I can remember saying something like, you know, if you didn't get into the bath with that expectation, you just got in with unwinding down, having emotional intimacy with me, and relaxing together. I just find it really soothing in the relationship, like I find it soothing individually. And what do you know? You know, maybe 8 times out of 10, our joint bubble baths end up with a happy ending because...
I don't have an expectation.
Yeah, you lowered that expectation, which I know was hard for you.
We have to process it, what works for us with our rituals.
Yes, you suggested I wear a paper bag.
I suggested you could wear a wetsuit. I suggested.
Yes. And I suggested you could wear a paper bag over your head.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's ways around all these
always ways
ritual issues.
around things. So rituals are important. Now let's summarise about today's session. We all need times of connection. We all need times to make sure we reignite that connection, but it takes thought and planning. Can we encourage you? Rituals may seem stiff and wobbly to start with, like many things, but like riding a bike, they become automatic, and you can enjoy the intimacy and fun that regular, anticipated, enjoyable experiences bring, so that you can reignite your connection along the way. It's interesting that the author of a book called Aging Well, Professor George Valiant, he researched what it was like to grow old. Now, many of you couples here are early in marriage, the springtime of your marriage, but it's still very interesting and important that you listen to this research, because he studied people's attitudes, capacities and health in their older years. And in a longitudinal study, guess what he discovered? A good marriage at 50 years of age was the most powerful predictor of health in old age. A good marriage when you're 50 is the most powerful predictor of health in old age. So being intentional lies at the heart of a strong marriage. Creating and maintaining a sense of connection and celebration will bind our hearts together. Why? Because they build our friendship, and friendship, fun and intimacy builds the marriage. It's like glue that holds you together as a couple. So enjoy your very own intentional marriage, and as you build connection and revitalise your connection, you will maintain your connection lifelong. We've looked at a few ways today. Yeah.
We've looked at the idea, instead of just connecting on 1 or 2 points, we work at ways in our relationship we connect on many deeper levels, by going to the courage zone, by trying new things, by being adventurous, by being ready to take our marriage to the next level.
So we'll leave you with this idea. Sometimes in our relationships, we feel like we're in a vicious cycle here. When an event occurs, be it an argument, the situation, a reaction, it can bring up the thoughts, not this again. We're back at the same point we've been at so many times before. But instead of seeing it as a vicious cycle here, we could look at it as a spiral. A spiral. Sure, the situation seems to be the same. Remember what John Gottman said? 69% of problems are perpetual. They're ongoing. So the situation might seem the same, but you're in a different point of the relationship. So you might, at first when I heard about the 69% thing of perpetual problems, I thought, oh, they're here to stay forever? Like, I learnt that a few decades ago. Discouraging it was in that moment when I learnt that. But when I further thought about it as a therapist, it actually made sense. We don't need to get so bogged down or frustrated when issues arise. Instead, we can ask ourselves, well, how far have I come? How far have I come on my learning and growth curve? How far have we both together come as we journey through life together? So rather than conflict issues being like a tombstone in a cemetery, we can view them like the old milestone posts. You know those milestone posts going from Sydney to Melbourne on the Hume Highway? Hands up who remembers. It's only the older population. Yep. How far... Sorry?
Thanks, Heather.
Are we embarrassed about being the old population? Not at all. We're young at heart. How far have we come in our growth? Okay? It's a milestone. How much has our relationship horizon expanded? That's a milestone. That's something to be celebrated.
So the good news is when the situation comes around the circle in your relationship, you're not at the same point. So don't think, oh, here we go again, this same perpetual problem's back. You're in a different spot in the spiral. You're a bit higher up, you've got more goodwill, you've got more skills to cope with it, you've got more ways to determine what the next step is. Don't think that you're stuck in a spiral.
We're going to leave you with this. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress, right? Working hard for something we love is called passion. Passion. Working intentionally on your relationship will create miles more passion, because being committed to growing your relationship is the best and most powerful way to love, to give of your best, expressing daily kindnesses. Good on you for being passionate about growing your marriage today. Good on you, all of you, for being here. And today we pray, as the committee did just last night, for all of you. And we will continue to pray that it will pay dividends and bring much joy to you both. So be brave, be life-giving, embrace change, and let your marriage shine.
Thank you.